who's been with CBS 4 years, I think. And Susan's going to do a sweet testimony about the power of prayer and how her faith in trusting in God during the season of drought. So Susan, thank you for saying that you do this for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, as Di said, talking about prayer and trust, just my standing in front of you today is a big exercise in that, because I wouldn't be here without your prayers, the ones of my CBS sisters, all of you that have come up and laid your hands on me for support and strength to do this, and also from my own family, from my husband and daughter. They've been a big help with me through this too, so I'll get started. There's a peace I've come to know, though my heart and flesh may fail. Most will recognize those words as the opening of I Will Rise by Chris Tomlin. I have peace about the destination, but not always for the journey. In fact, even when I was little, I allowed myself to live in fear and worry. If I asked my dad when he thought the world would end, he always had the same answer. Honey, the world ends for people every day. No one knows when that's going to be. All you can do is to protect yourself from within by trusting in God. He trusted in the 91st Psalm throughout his life, especially since he leaned on it so heavily during World War II. He and my mom were godly parents who raised their 6 kids with love and discipline. So my head knew these lessons about trust, but did my heart? I always believed in God, but being in control and planning are part of me, in addition to the fear and worry that I mentioned earlier. In 2012, my mom suffered a severe heart attack. We were just catching our breath from the year before, when my dad had fallen and had complications from multiple surgeries, while one sister had a double mastectomy and chemo. 3 amazing ladies now helped us care for my mom and dad, who were ages 79 and 89 at that time. As 5 months of hospice passed, I was increasingly anxious driving back and forth to their home in Conroe. I felt like I was in this nonstop game of hot potato. That game always made me anxious, with the ticking and not knowing when that buzzer was going to go off. Who created that game? I stressed because this is how I've been feeling for months. I also felt selfish because my mom was the one who was sick, and she never complained about her suffering. Each time she had an episode of heart failure, there was a protocol of prescribed meds to help her. And even though I knew she was going to go to heaven when she died, I was anxious, knowing that there was going to be a day that the meds weren't going to help, and that buzzer was going to sound, and she was going to pass away on someone's watch. Will it happen on my watch? Will I panic? If I do something wrong, will I cause her more pain? On one trip, I pulled over 3 times. My heart raced so intensely that I felt like I was going to pass out while I was driving. What is wrong with me? I believed in God, and yet I had no peace. And then it hit me. I had no control over this situation. I poured out my heart, telling God that I was scared and exhausted, just living in this constant state of anxiety. 2 words, help me, I prayed, as I stopped in my car on the side of the road. And he gave me 2 words back, placed them in my heart, let go. And in that moment, I accepted that God would call my mom home in his timing. My only job was to trust him. I still checked in with my doctor to make sure that my heart was fine, and it was, physically. He said I was in a stressful situation and that it would likely get worse before it got better. He offered some medication that could help for future episodes, but I told him I need to try working through this with prayer, because life was always going to have struggles, even beyond this. So my letting go allowed God to put my heart through his version of cardiac rehab. Psalm 73:26 says, my flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. I pondered those words a lot. Flesh, heart, fail, especially heart failure. God made Mom's heart, and she never failed to care for others. And now, through her suffering and giving us this chance to care for her, God was making a way to change my heart so that I would trust him. 2 more months passed, and my mom was now bedridden. Again, I allowed worry to creep in as I wondered if I was ready for this next phase. That night, I had a dream. I was crying in a dark room. A soft light came on, and Mom's smiling young face was looking down on me. I was a baby in my crib, and my mom gently took care of me. God opened a tiny window from the past that represented a lifetime of love that my mom poured out on the generations of our family. When it gets hard or awkward, remember this moment, I could feel God telling me. I would still hit walls and ask my siblings how they were handling it. One sister told me, "Your worry is undoing your prayers." And my other brother wisely said, "I try not to think ahead because it's not in my hands. I just ask God to give us this day our daily bread." Prayer and trust, all summed up in the Lord's Prayer taught to us by Jesus. We may not have answers, but we could pray that God would give us what we needed when we needed it, and he did. He also blessed us with countless moments of love and pure joy. And when Jesus called her home a month later, she had passed away in her sleep. God placed in my heart that Mom didn't die of heart failure. She died of heart fullness because it was so full of love. The next 6.5 years without her were hard, especially for my dad. He made us proud because he gave each day his best effort. Even so, he told us often that he was ready to go home whenever God called. In 2019, he's now 96.5 at the time, he was hospitalized for an infection, and we took turns to make sure someone was always with him. One morning, I arrived at the hospital extra early because I wanted to talk to the doctor, and surprise, one of my sisters flew in the night before, and she was already there to help. It was a chance to go home and rest, but for some reason, I just wasn't in a hurry to leave. We were just having a great day together. It's now late afternoon, and during physical therapy, the physical therapist was telling us how impressed she was with my dad and how well he was doing. So now he was supposed to practice getting out of bed. And as he was going through the motions that she was putting him through, he brought his hand to his chest and he winced. And I said, "I think it's his heart." So the PT left to get the nurse. When they returned, I said, "I don't know what's happening, but he has told his family that he is ready to go home whenever that time comes." The nurse lifted his sleeve to check his pulse, saw the DNR bracelet, and said, "Start talking to him. I'm having a hard time getting a pulse." My sister and I put his hands in ours as we settled in on either side of him. We called the other kids and were able to get our other sister on speaker, telling her to start talking to Dad because he's going home. And she said, "Oh, he's going home?" as if he was being released from the hospital. And we said slowly, "No, sweetie, he's going home." Through tears, she expressed our love for him and began praying the Lord's Prayer. We joined her and prayed over him, trusting in whatever God's will was at that moment. There was no panic or fear, only love and peace. Dad released his final breaths, and the man who dwelled in the shelter of the Lord was safely home. "Because he loves me," says the Lord in Psalm 91, "I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in time of trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation." That psalm was an amazing parallel to my dad's life. God showed me through him, through my dad, what is possible if I choose to trust him the way that Dad did. And when my heart is restless with fear, worry, or anxiety, I realize in these moments I'm not trusting in God. So I pray and trust that he will provide in his timing. Often, the answer is the blessing of a peaceful heart. Ephesians 3:20 says, "He is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think." So I ask myself, why wouldn't I put my trust in him? Thank you.